When the end of the year started getting close, those strange childhood memories always came back. In the 60s and 70s, there were toys that sold like crazy, hurt kids, caught the attention of the authorities, and vanished from stores after a huge recall. Today, I'm opening that memory chest and showing you 22 classic toys. Number 18 is so rare that some collectors in the US are paying more than $10,000 for it at auction. Evel Knievel Stunt Cycle. Back in the 70s, Evel Knievel was always showing up on TV trying to jump rows of buses and even the Snake River Canyon, and this toy was the cheapest way to get in on the same vibe. Pretty much every big store had a box of these, and a lot of kids got one for Christmas or their birthday. The fun started when you locked the figure onto the bike and cranked the launcher, like you were firing up a Harley. The living room turned into an arena. The carpet became the track, books turned into buses, the table became an improvised ramp. Sometimes the bike nailed the jump perfectly. Sometimes it went flying and smacked someone's leg, making the whole family crack up. In the end, the floor was covered in obstacles, but the feeling was the same for everyone. For a few moments, that plastic setup made any kid feel like the most famous stuntman in the country. Steve Austin action figure, the $6 Million Man. In the 70s, when a lot of families still gathered around the TV, this Kenner figure became a symbol of high tech for kids. Inspired by the series with Lee Majors, it came with the famous red jumpsuit and felt like having a real mission gadget in your hands. Government-grade stuff, not just a cheap toy. The detail everyone tried first was the bionic eye. You'd press your face behind his head and see the room as if you had a tiny secret viewer. On his right arm, the rubber skin hid parts that looked like circuits, and by turning his head, he could lift weights or the engine block that came in many sets. In the living room or the backyard, any couch became the OSI base, any hallway felt like a special ops scene, and Steve Austin was on duty, ready for another slow-motion mission. World's Greatest Superheroes. In the early 70s, Mego, a New York toy company known for making cheap toys, made a huge turnaround that a lot of guys over 50 remember well. The owner's son took over and had a simple but brilliant idea. Use the same 8-inch body for every figure and only change the head, costume, and accessories. In 1972, in a deal that feels straight out of a movie today, the company secured the rights to both DC and Marvel to release articulated figures with cloth outfits, all stamped with the world's greatest superheroes label. First came Batman, Robin, Aquaman, and Superman. Soon after came Spider-Man, Captain America, and Tarzan. Suddenly, grocery store shelves and mail-order catalogs turned into rows of heroes. In many homes, the box-style TV was tuned to Saturday morning cartoons. The carpet was covered with action figures, and kids created stories the comics never showed. Spider-Man teaming up with Superman, Batman facing off against Captain America, and the same Batmobile rolling through adventure after adventure. Etch-a-Sketch. Long before it became a classic on toy store shelves in the United States, it was created in a factory on the outskirts of Paris by André Cassagne, an electrician who worked with aluminum powder and light switch parts. One day he realized you could make lines appear by scraping the powder stuck behind a piece of glass. And from that discovery came the idea of a screen that reset when you shook it. He took the invention to European fairs under the name L'Écran Magique, but the big manufacturers turned up their noses at it. Only much later did the small Ohio art company decide to take a chance, paid for the license, and poured big money into TV commercials, aiming at Christmas 1960, right in the middle of the baby boom. Inside, the trick was simple. 2 knobs moved a hidden stylus that scraped the powder, making lines like a kid steering through a narrow hallway. For many American children, it was their first taste of having a screen of their own. Mess up, shake it, start again. G.I. Joe with Kung Fu grip was the kind of toy that defined an era. In the early 70s, Almost every boy in the United States who turned on the TV saw commercials of the figure grabbing ropes, weapons, and even a motorcycle handlebar like a real soldier. The figure had been around since 1964, but when Hasbro swapped the hard hands for rubber ones that actually gripped, the whole way kids played changed. In the middle of the Cold War, with news about Vietnam and martial arts movies on TV at night, that uniformed guy with fighter-looking hands fit perfectly into the vibe of the time. The kitchen, living room, and backyard turned into mission scenes. Lots of kids tested how long the figure could hang from a chair, a doorknob, a shelf. For kids back then, it wasn't just a toy. It was a way to bring a little piece of that world of war, espionage, and karate chops that showed up on the screen every day right into their homes. Baby Alive. In the 1970s, a lot of homes in the United States were still getting used to color TV when this doll showed up on store shelves. Created by Kenner in 1973, it promised something different, letting kids practice a mom and dad routine, complete with a bottle, little diapers, and baby food they had to prepare. When you fed the doll, the liquid went through the inside and ended up messing the diaper, which meant the kid had to clean it up and change everything again. For a generation that grew up with simple plastic or wooden toys, seeing that actually work felt like something from the future. Suddenly, the living room turned into a mini daycare, with kids totally focused and adults torn between laughing at the scene and imagining the work it would be if that were a real baby. In the weeks before Christmas, finding a baby alive in a store could turn into a mission, shelves emptying fast, ads everywhere, and kids repeating the same request in their letters to Santa. Green Machine. In the 1970s, when the big wheel already felt like something for little kids, this green trike became almost a rite of passage in American neighborhoods. Made by Marx for slightly older boys, it looked like a plastic hot rod, cheap for parents and enough to make any kid feel like a real driver. Instead of a handlebar, two levers controlled the rear axle. Anyone who knew how to use them would pull one, push the other, and spin almost on their own axis, doing a quick turnaround right in the middle of the street. The low seat put you just inches from the ground, watching the pavement zip by like you were in a TV race car. A lot of people over 50 today can still hear the hard plastic wheels on the concrete. Remember the scraped knees, and that great feeling that on that quiet block, you had your own personal racetrack. It was the kind of toy that brought all the kids to the sidewalk, everyone waiting for their turn and betting on who could make the tightest turn without tipping over. Mattel Electronics Football 2. At the end of the 1970s, when there were no smartphones, anyone who wanted to carry football in their pocket depended on this little plastic brick with red LEDs. It seems way too simple today, but for kids back then it was cutting-edge tech. Your own computer, powered by a 9-volt battery, telling you if you gained 10 yards or got stopped at the line. Instead of shiny helmets and perfect grass, there were just little dots running on a narrow field, and the rest was up to your imagination. Lots of people practice plays on the bus, during work breaks, in the grocery line, always trying to score one more touchdown before slipping the device back into their jacket pocket. For many men who grew up in that era, this game was their first real contact with something electronic. An early taste of the future that would come with video games, real computers, and that new way of having fun anywhere. Simon. At the turn into the 80s, when the Atari was starting to show up in homes, this memory game became a craze across the US. Instead of cards or a board, it was a round device with 4 colored panels that, for anyone who'd grown up with just radio and black and white TV, looked like something from another planet. Ralph Baer and Howard Morrison designed it for Milton Bradley in 1978, and it delivered its commands with lights and beeps while the player had to repeat the sequence without messing up. The list of signals kept growing until your brain begged for mercy. One slip and that failure sound rang out, a noise a lot of people still remember perfectly. Plenty of folks ran into Simon at birthday parties in carpeted basements or on the kitchen table next to a cereal box. Parents, kids, and grandparents took turns, teasing each other and arguing over who still had a sharp memory. For many men over 50, remembering Simon is remembering a time when high-tech felt like it could fit inside a single battery-powered toy. Lite-Brite. Back in 1967, Hasbro put a simple toy on the market that was unlike almost anything on store shelves. It was a lighted screen where kids could plug in small, transparent colored pegs to make pictures that glowed in the dark living room. A lot of people remember turning off the TV, pulling up a chair, and spending ages creating landscapes, team logos, cars, or the emblem of their favorite show. There were cards with ready-made designs, but most kids preferred to take their chances and make up whatever came to mind. The pegs disappeared into the carpet, and every now and then someone would step on one on the way to the kitchen. Still, at the end of the night it was common to pull everything apart, as if the picture had never existed. The magic was knowing that the next day you could start over and create something new, in a time when having a screen at home didn't mean a video game or a phone. Hot Wheels. In the late 1960s, when Detroit was still called Motor City, Elliot Handler noticed something simple. The shelves had Barbie, board games, but no car toy that made boys go crazy. In 1968, he decided to take the spirit of the muscle cars roaring down American highways and shrink it all down to fit in a kid's hand. The difference was in the thin wheels with metal axles, made to run fast, leaving Matchbox cars looking like they were stuck at a red light. Mattel brought in people who designed real cars, like Harry Bentley Bradley, and released 16 models with shiny paint and names that felt straight out of a body shop. Soon the orange tracks showed up, turning living rooms, garages, and basements into racetracks. In no time, dads who had driven real V8s were on the floor next to their kids, betting on which car would cross the finish line first. Lego. In the 60s, while most people were only thinking about slot cars and metal toy cars, a different kind of toy was coming from Denmark. Little bricks that clicked together. The idea seemed simple, but it changed everything. Instead of just pushing a car across the living room, you could build the workshop, the gas station, the whole street. These bricks had been created in the late 40s after the war, when the world was still trying to reorganize itself, and they were perfect for parents who wanted to see their kids actually create something instead of just watching. A lot of boxes were bought for the kids, and ended up with Dad sitting on the carpet late into the night building buildings, bridges, garages, realizing that those bricks gave a sense of control and peace that felt less like a toy and more like a time machine. And the more pieces spread across the floor, the more the whole house felt part of the story, as if each build were an engineering project that fit right on the kitchen table. Stretch Armstrong. In 1976, Kenner put this blonde guy with exaggerated muscles and dark trunks on store shelves, right at a time when toys were starting to feel like little science experiments you could do at home. For the average American dad, still thinking about Vietnam and the oil crisis, it was a way to watch his kids pull, twist, and tie the figure to a chair, a doorknob, or even their younger brother. The promise was simple. He stretches almost 5 feet and goes back to normal. Inside, there was no magic, just a thick gel made from corn syrup, built to survive all the testing in the living room. Every neighborhood had that kid who wanted to see what was inside and jabbed a knife or nail into Stretch's chest. Once the goo got stuck in the carpet and on everyone's socks, the show was over and the lecture began. Some 70s toys were made to last, but not to beat a kid's curiosity. Atari 2600. Early 80s, late afternoon, the family had already eaten dinner and the tube TV in the living room became the center of attention. Instead of just watching the same few channels, someone turned on the brown console with those silver switches, and suddenly the screen became an electronic playground. Mario Bros. Showed up in its Atari version, blocky and clunky, totally different from the arcade at the corner store. But for anyone sitting there, it felt like something from another world. One joystick in hand, one button, and a clear mission. Beat the level, rack up points, and don't let your younger sibling steal the controller. Every new cartridge felt like a paycheck-level investment, bought at a mall shop or wished for at Christmas. And there was always talk about which game was better, whether it was worth trading, lending, or keeping like treasure. When the game glitched, the sound crackled, or the picture went bad, nobody called tech support. You pulled out the cartridge, blew on it, snapped it back in, and that was it. Another round in the basement or living room, way past bedtime. Star Wars action figures and the Millennium Falcon. In 1977, when the first movie came out, Kenner realized it wasn't just a summer hit. It was playground talk, dinner table talk, and movie line talk. The solution was to create 3.75-inch figures, small enough to fit in a jeans pocket and cheap to produce along with ships and vehicles. Suddenly, the kitchen, the backyard, and the basement turned into battle scenes. Every new figure at the store felt like an extra character joining a never-ending series. To handle the Christmas rush, the company released the Early Bird Certificate, a cardboard kit that promised to mail the first figures months later. A pretty bold move for a kid's toy. In 1979, the Millennium Falcon arrived. Half ship, half playset. Secret compartment, game area, top cannon, front ramp. For a lot of kids, sitting on the floor with that thing was the closest they could get to piloting the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy. Hungry, hungry hippos. In the late 1970s, when Milton Bradley was still a big name in American toy stores at the mall, this game showed up promising to bring the whole family around the kitchen table. The idea was simple, the kind middle-aged guys love. Each player controlled a plastic hippo trying to gobble up as many marbles as possible. But behind that simplicity, there was something bigger. The game fit perfectly into a world of tube TVs, sugary cereal, and weekend hangouts in the basement, while parents were still trying to figure out the new habits of their kids' generation. A lot of people over 50 today remember the noise of the levers competing with the football announcer on TV, the teasing between siblings and cousins, and that rare feeling that for a few minutes everyone in the house was playing together. No phones, no rush, and nobody pretending they didn't care about who won. Operation came out in the 60s as one of those classic games that seemed simple but stuck in your memory. Before video games, the internet, and cell phones, lots of family nights revolved around it. The living room table, the TV in the background, everyone teasing the next person whose hand would shake. It was a fun way to talk about hospitals, surgery, and nerves of steel without scaring anyone. The buzzer and the red nose light became part of the background noise of childhood for a lot of people, almost like a weekend soundtrack. The game also reflected the vibe of the time, confidence in medicine, fascination with technology, and that idea that with practice anyone could get more precise, more professional. Today, when someone remembers the board and that patient with the glowing nose, it's not just the sound that comes back. It's the feeling of being surrounded by people, laughing freely, with zero rush to finish the game. In the end, it was a lesson in patience and focus that no modern app has really managed to copy. Weebles. In the United States of the 70s, during those mornings in front of the TV and the Sears catalog sitting on the kitchen table, these little egg-shaped figures showed up like a small revolution. Play School took a simple physics idea, weight on the bottom, light body on top, and turned it into a toy that could tip over, wobble, but always come back upright. While parents worried about inflation and the oil crisis, kids were glued to the TV, hypnotized by the commercials between cartoons and kids' shows, hearing that English jingle that stuck in your head all day long. The sets came with a little house, a car, a boat, and a playground, all made of hard plastic, built to survive linoleum floors, carpet, and the backyard. Today, when a man over 50 finds a Weeble in a box in the basement or in an online auction, he's not just seeing an old toy, he's looking at a whole piece of what it felt like to grow up in America back then. Tin Can Alley. In the 70s and 80s, when a lot of middle-class families were trading country life for minivan-filled suburbs, this game became a star of Sunday afternoons. The box came out of the living room closet, everyone set up the plastic base on the carpet, and stacked the silver cans like a small-town carnival target. The light beam pistol felt modern, like the gadgets you'd see in early cable TV commercials. Each shot triggered the hidden sensor in the base, and if your aim was good, the can would pop backward, making both kids and adults laugh. Before long, improvised tournaments broke out. Best of 5, best of 10, or a round to decide who had to go buy new AA batteries at the corner store. It was a simple way to see who still had a steady hand and at the same time remember a moment when all the fun fit perfectly in the space between the couch and the tube TV, and nobody wanted to be the first one to stop playing. Rock'em Sock'em Robots, created by Louis Marks & Co. In 1964, this plastic boxing ring became part of everyday life for a lot of American families. Back when kids gathered in the living room instead of in front of a tablet, two robots, Red Rocker and Blue Bomber, stood face to face waiting for the first punch. Each player hammered the buttons on the base, moving the arms and bodies until they landed an uppercut that popped the opponent's head up in a clean, quick knockout. The idea came from an earlier boxing toy with real fighters, but after featherweight Davey Moore died, the creators decided to swap humans for machines and cool down the theme. Even so, the mood was still serious. Siblings fought over matches, dads demanded rematches, and neighbors lined up to play. Within a few years, the game was in commercials, Christmas catalogs, and later in movies, becoming an instant reminder of a time when fun fit right on top of the kitchen table. Spirograph. In the mid-60s, Spirograph came out of the mind of British engineer Dennis Fisher and became one of those tabletop toys that sat next to the magazines, ready for a quiet night at home. Inside the box came a plastic ring, little toothed wheels, and blank sheets of paper. All you had to do was pin down the ring, fit a wheel inside it, place your pen in one of the holes, and start turning. Line by line, spirals, circles, and shapes appeared, looking like car wheels, flowers, or radar antennas. In 1965, the toy caught attention at big European fairs, and soon after Kenner brought it to American shelves. In 1967, it won Toy of the Year in the UK. For many men now over 50, it was with that simple set on the kitchen table that gears, repetition, and motion stopped being lab concepts and became part of everyday life. A lot of people still remember the soft sound of the pen gliding along the gear teeth. Tonka trucks. In the 50s and 60s, a lot of American boys spent whole afternoons pushing these metal trucks around the backyard like they were working on a real construction site. The idea came in the late 40s in Minnesota, when a small tool company realized that steel sheets could be turned into toys that could take a beating. The result was heavy, simple trucks in that bright yellow you could spot from far away. They hauled dirt, rocks, broken bricks, whatever you threw at them. Every dent in the bed told a story of a job well done. A lot of people remember the sound of the wheels on concrete and their dad helping them dig their first dirt road. In many families, the Tonka was passed from brother to brother, then to cousins, and kept going strong. Today, when a man sees an old Tonka on a shelf, he's not just looking at a toy, but at a piece of that post-war childhood when all you needed was a yard, a pile of dirt, and a steel truck to fill an entire day.